Hey, thanks for tuning in. One of my vices is traveling, and I love to do cruises as part of traveling. Not every time, but a good portion. In fact, I recently made this video you can check out right here about why I love cruising. And during that video, I counted down the top 10 things I love about cruising and why I choose it every time. But every time I'm on a cruise boat, which is about 3 times a year, maybe more, I just want to... You know what I mean? And that's not just my family. Hey, my name is Mr. X. Welcome to the Xtreme channel. We are giving away $1,000 statues to you guys. If you want to know how to win one, stay tuned for later in the video. Hey, thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to do another countdown list about traveling, specifically the top 10 worst things about going on a cruise. Now, if you didn't catch that previous video, again, you can check that out. The link for that is in the description below. I alluded to in that video that it's not really being on the water, turbulence, I don't know if it's called turbulence in the water, motion sickness, that's not going to be on the list today, although it does happen. And if you missed that video, just kind of a heads up, out of the 150 or so days I've been on a cruise boat, I've only had 3 that had really bad weather that made it really turbulent and a lot of people got sick. I think that's a pretty good record, running less than 2% of the time. But I've broken it down into 4 categories. And I think these categories are also going to show you a little bit of my personality. So if you're new to the channel, it takes about 60 videos to like me, so just hold on to that. But let's start off with when you book a cruise, obviously it's an expense. No one likes spending money. In that previous video at the end, I also alluded to, generally it's around $1,000 per person, $1,000 to $1,500 per person for a 7-day cruise, which is a lot of money. Now the big problem with this is that's just for the cruise. There are extra expenses. So expenses is the first category, and there's 2 things in expenses. So again, I'm going to count these down. These are in no particular order, but the number 10 reason I do not like cruising is the additional money you got to spend on flights and hotels. So let me break this down for you. Generally, if you don't live on the coast and you can't drive to one of the ports, you have to fly. And a lot of times, we almost always do a cruise during spring break. The flights alone are outrageous. Sometimes we're spending $4,000 or $5,000 on flights just for my family of 5 on top of that original cruise expense. Another thing you have to spend money on, typically if you're flying in, we always go the day before, because one time we didn't and we wound up in trouble. It was actually our connecting flight years and years ago, probably 15 to 20 years ago, and our connecting flight was canceled. So we had to do 4 different flights, pay a taxi driver to go 200 miles to barely make the boat on time. So ever since then, especially in the winter if we're flying, we always go the day before. Well, there's additional costs with housing and food. So those extra getting there expenses is my number 10 reason I hate cruises. Number 9 is the tips. If you've never been on a cruise, you might have heard the tips are outrageous. Now they're not outrageous, they're just unexpected if you don't know what's going on. So first of all, anytime you buy something, you have to tip for the most part. If you get an additional alcoholic drink because you don't have a package, that's a tip. If you buy the alcohol package, you still have to tip on that. Tips are mandatory, they're already pre-designated amounts. You can, of course, tip more if you'd want to, and a lot of people do. The biggest part of tips is you actually have to tip every single day a certain amount. Back in the day, it actually used to be a certain amount of people, like you had to tip your stateroom attendant, their assistant, your waiter, your assistant waiter. But nowadays, you have different people doing all those jobs. So they still call it gratuities, but you don't know who you're giving it to or how much or why. And the crazy thing is tips are more expensive now. Some of those jobs I just listed, they actually have less people doing them. Back in the day, you would actually physically give them the cash or give them your receipt for the credit card at the end of the cruise because you had the same waiter the entire time. That's kind of a noble thank you. But now they're just tacked onto your room. How much? It kind of varies between $16 and $25 per person per day. So as you can imagine, if you have a family of 5, you may be paying another $700 to $1,000 just in those types of gratuities. And I'm not even talking about when you buy a drink. The next category of the next 3 items are all about lines. I hate standing in line. And I've talked about in this video right here, if I can pay for a front of the line pass, I will pay for that pass 100% of the time. So lines start on day 1. And with that, some ports are better than others depending what's going on. My most recent cruise before I filmed this, it took us 3.5 hours to get on board, and we were standing in line the entire time, slowly moving and moving and moving to different stations. That was out of Vancouver, British Columbia. Absolutely horrible. But then again, the cruise I went on a few months before that, while we didn't have to wait in line, we had to sit and wait and get on the boat. So I just hate getting on and off, and that's not exclusive to day one. A cruise I did in last year, we actually tendered to a port. What that means is that the port does not have a big enough dock for your ship, so you actually have to take lifeboats, the big old lifeboats that hold like 200 people. Well, to get back on the ship, the line was an hour and a half wait because they didn't have enough tenders going. I don't know what the problem was, but the lines are absolutely killer. You're trying to get on board, that's all you want to do. You want to get in, check in, clean up, whatever that looks like, and you can't. Now the same thing is true of the opposite. Getting off is absolutely horrible. Not only, this is especially true when you tender. I remember one island, we were going to spend 6 hours at that. It took us 3.5 hours to get off board, waiting just for a boat for us to get there. Now, while this isn't incredibly common because most of the ports you actually pull up to, very annoying. And sometimes when you're getting off board to go to an island, even if you're ported up there, there's a huge ass line. However, as seasoned cruisers who've done over 20, I can tell you that there are secret little tips you can do. So for example, we know when we're going into a port, we actually go down by the gangway because there's always a bar there on the cruise ships we go to, and we hang out there for about 30 minutes prior to getting off, and we're usually one of the first ones off. Now the last thing about lines, food lines. Food lines are horrendous, especially on day one and some sea days. Everybody wants to eat all the time. A few tips again, never go right when they open the lunch buffet because the lines will be absolutely the worst about 10 minutes in. Always make reservations at the nice restaurants when you can, but you are always waiting in line for food. And the worst part about this is some people's mamas didn't teach them about lines. They think they're entitled. They think they paid more. I don't know what's in their mentality. On cruises that have kids, you will see them cutting these lines all the time, which blows my mind because my 3 children know respect. Which leads me to my last category, my last 5 things, the people. Pardon my language, if there's kids watching, I fucking hate the people. The people make the cruise worse. And I'm not talking about the employees, I'm talking about the other guests. Now don't get me wrong, we connect with some fantastic people, some that we're friends with 20 years later even though we only spent a week together. But that first one is people don't know how to operate in lines. Just as I talked about. And what really gets me is these people don't know how to use a line properly, yet somehow they are able to spend $5,000 to $10,000 to $20,000 on a vacation. What kind of job do you have that you can afford to do this, where your job doesn't even require you to understand the basic concepts of a line? Another thing I hate is when people are on a cruise boat, they really get FOMO. If you don't know what FOMO is fear of missing out. It's really prevalent in the collecting community when you have high-end collectibles. But it is, they think that, oh my God, I gotta get this done. I need to cut in line or do whatever it takes. Otherwise, I'm gonna miss out. The cruise is pumping up all these amazing, exciting things. I have to get there first. I have to make sure that I screw other people because I don't wanna miss out. A good example of this is sometimes they give away free pendants or charms. They're worthless. They're like $2. My wife and daughter like to collect them because we've been to so many different ones. The line for that will be 3 hours long. People really have FOMO on boats. And on the opposite side of that, they really have entitlement. You know, a lot of cruise lines make you feel like you're a celebrity or they're rolling out the red carpet. Well, some people, either they were this way before they got on board or they transform into this. They think they are owed the world on every single item, not only from employees, but from other guests, that we should bow to their demands. People really get prissy and high up when they're on these vacations. And when people noticeably do stuff like this, I'm very audible. And this includes cutting in line. I will say, I guess you paid more than I did, which you know Mr. X and how much I like to spend money. Usually that's not true. The next one is these people's unawareness and first-time cruisers. I understand you have to do a first-time cruise sometime, so I get that, but these people slow everybody down, they get in the way, but what's hilarious, I hear this all the time, is I will see 2 couples or groups of people talking every single trip, and they're first-time cruisers. Both groups are. And I sit there and listen to a conversation about them talking like they're tenured cruisers, giving all these tips and tricks that are mostly wrong, and it's just hilarious, but it just adds to the calamity. Oh yeah, you gotta do this. And again, it just gets in the way of other people. Which leads me to my last thing, and this probably is the number one thing. I've talked about this in like this video right here. I travel in the airport. This year alone, I've already hit like 60 flights, and it's only July that I'm filming this, or August. I don't even know what month it is. But people's social unawareness, they think other people don't exist, whether that's the line issue or when they're walking, they just stop with a lot of people behind you, or maybe they're completely blocking the way you need to go and they won't move. I see that. I see a group of people on a cruise boat hanging out, blocking a door, having a conversation. Just their social unawareness, or maybe they just don't care, which goes back to that entitlement. But people's social unawareness just blows my mind. When I'm walking in a crowded place, before I stop, I look around. Another big part of this, there are days I talked about earlier when you're waiting in line to get food in the buffet, like right when you get on board, the first day you get on board, everybody wants to eat. That's the biggest place that's open. It's very hard to get a seat. And people are not only done with their meal, but they're fucking playing cards. Again, pardon my language. They're playing cards on a table that is meant for eating. There's plenty of game rooms and stuff like that they can play cards, but no. I actually saw one of the waiters try and kick out a group of Karens when there were no seats available. Literally, my children were sitting eating and my wife and I were standing eating, and they were playing cards in the buffet, the dining room, and they refused to move. Again, entitlement or social unawareness, both are horrible combinations. Now, with that being said, cruising is still my favorite venue of choice. It is still my favorite way to vacay for all the reasons that I said in the previous video. So if I could go on a cruise with just my friends and family, people who actually know how to operate in society, maybe it would be a lot better. I'm not sure. Maybe we should do that, a Mr. X cruise. You know, it's ironic, Celebrity, their logo is a big X, the cruise line we always like to go on. But I really appreciate you guys watching. I know this is a different type of video from most of the normal people that watch. And if you like travel stuff like this, make sure to subscribe to the button and hit that bell notification. And if you like collectible stuff and you still haven't, do that. But most importantly, comment, because you could actually win a statue. As we try to grow this channel, we like to reward you guys for watching and subscribing. So because of that, every 5,000 milestone when it comes to subscribers, we give away a couple $1,000s worth of statues. We've actually given away over 20 statues. To win one was easy. First, you gotta be subscribed to the channel. You'll get bell notifications when videos drop. Each video that drops, you wanna make a comment on those videos. We pick a random video, we give away statues based on a comment. You can say whatever you want. The more videos you comment on, the higher your chances are to win. Hey, thank you for tuning in. Again, different type of video. I appreciate those people that are really loyal and always watch no matter what we have. And if you're new to me and cruising and travel, thanks for watching. Please hit that like, it really helps. Talk to you soon. Take care.